We know these men as leaders, rulers, and generals. But before the world saw power, they were just boys with uncertain futures. Franklin Delano Roosevelt once battled polio in his 30s, but as a boy, he was shy and bookish, never knowing he'd one day guide a nation. Ulysses S. Grant grew up on an Ohio farm, known more for his skill with horses than with books, a quiet boy who never imagined leading the Union armies in a brutal civil war. Alexander III of Russia was raised in the shadow of his brother, never prepared to rule, a tall and strong young man who preferred the barracks to the throne that fate forced upon him. Theodore Roosevelt began as a frail, sickly child, obsessed with animals and books, who pushed himself into strength and adventure long before becoming America's Rough Rider. Vladimir Lenin lost his brother to execution when he was just a teenager, a tragedy that transformed a bright, quiet student into a restless young man with a burning sense of purpose. Georges Clemenceau was a rebellious medical student in Paris, jailed briefly for his radical writings, long before he earned the title of France's Tiger in his old age. Adolf Hitler once dreamed of being a painter in Vienna, rejected twice by the Art Academy, a drifting youth whose failed sketches became the backdrop to a destiny the world remembers. Winston Churchill struggled at school, often near the bottom of his class. Yet, as a young officer, he craved danger and glory, carrying notebooks alongside his sword into battle. Joseph Stalin was born Ioseb Dukashvili, the pockmarked son of a shoemaker, trained for the priesthood before his rebellious streak turned him toward a darker path. William McKinley enlisted as a teenager in the Civil War, a boy soldier who carried food and comfort to men under fire, long before he rose quietly into national politics. Nicholas II of Russia spent his youth in privilege, known as gentle and soft-spoken, yet unprepared for the weight of empire that one day would fall heavily upon him. Grover Cleveland was a poor boy who worked to support his family, walking miles to school, his youth shaped not by privilege but by long hours and relentless persistence. Benito Mussolini grew up in an Italian village, the blacksmith's son, restless and often in trouble, his fiery temper as evident in childhood as it was in the years to come. Franz Ferdinand of Austria was a sickly child who nearly died of tuberculosis, spending his youth in recovery, never expected to inherit the throne that fate placed in his hands. Leon Trotsky was a bright farm boy from Ukraine, sent away at 17 for revolutionary dreams, scribbling essays instead of living the simple rural life meant for him. George S. Patton struggled with reading as a boy, even suspected of dyslexia, but devoted himself to discipline and courage, molding the brash personality the world would later see. Wilhelm II, German emperor, was born with a paralyzed arm, mocked for his disability. Yet, as a young man, he rode horses and drilled himself relentlessly to prove he was strong. Felix Dzierżynski was a Polish noble's son, a studious boy who once dreamed of teaching, but his youthful arrests and years in prison hardened him long before he became feared. Robert E. Lee grew up in Virginia with a father who abandoned the family, the quiet boy carrying shame and duty on his shoulders, long before the Civil War defined him. Charles de Gaulle was a reserve boy from a patriotic family, fascinated by military history, scribbling war stories in notebooks before living them out on the battlefields of Europe. Edward VIII, known simply as Young David, was a restless, charming boy who loved sports and fast cars, never imagining that his youthful passions would clash with a crown. William Howard Taft was a cheerful, heavy-set boy, known for kindness more than ambition, the son of a judge who nudged him from playgrounds into the corridors of power. Konstantin Pats grew up in rural Estonia, the son of a farmer, a studious young man who trained as a teacher before history swept him into the storms of politics. Woodrow Wilson was a late learner, unable to read until 9. A shy Southern boy whose struggle with words gave him a lifelong reverence for language and ideas. Józef Piłsudski spent his youth in Russian-controlled Poland, arrested as a student for carrying illegal books, his rebellious streak already marking him as a future fighter. Harry S. Truman grew up on a Missouri farm, a boy with poor eyesight and thick glasses, who spent hours reading history instead of running the fields with other children. Dwight D. Eisenhower was one of 7 sons in a poor family, a boy who loved baseball and boxing, carrying discipline from the playground straight into West Point. John J. Pershing grew up in Missouri as the son of a small-town storekeeper, teaching school at just 17, before choosing the strict path of the military. Calvin Coolidge was a shy farm boy from Vermont, often quiet and reserved, a youth who learned more from silence than speech, traits that defined him as a man. Herbert Hoover was orphaned at 9, a solemn boy raised by relatives, working odd jobs through his teens, long before he found success as an engineer and statesman. Chester A. Arthur grew up the preacher's son, a studious boy who taught school in his youth, hardly the image of the polished politician he would later become. William Jennings was raised in rural Illinois, a farm boy who learned oratory from listening to preachers, shaping the booming voice that made him famous. Douglas MacArthur grew up on army posts, the son of a decorated general, a boy in uniform before he was even a man, molded by discipline from the start. Franz Joseph of Austria became emperor at just 18, still more a boy than a man, stepping from adolescence into the burden of a monarchy that would last his lifetime. George VI was a shy prince with a stammer, overshadowed by his older brother, a nervous boy who preferred naval training to the public spotlight that destiny forced upon him. Neville Chamberlain was a reserved boy from Birmingham, raised by a political family, more interested in business than in speeches, never guessing he'd one day carry the weight of peace and war. David Lloyd was raised in poverty in Wales, the son of a schoolteacher, a fiery youth who spoke from street corners long before he spoke for Britain.